I'm Caleb from Caleb's Aviation. Welcome back to the channel, and thanks for joining me if you're new. Right now, I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, just outside of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, after just attending AvCon, the first annual aviation content creator convention. That was awesome, and the video is linked up above if you're interested in checking it out. I then headed back to my hotel, the Atlanta Renaissance Concourse Hotel, to do some plane spotting with some friends, and it was really cool. We even did some live streaming. Also make sure to check out my friends' social medias and give them a follow or subscribe. We even managed to capture a 747.
Cargo launch. Hey Ryan. Smile.
Anyway, after more than enough fun, I headed back to my room to watch the planes and get ready for bed. I had a very early morning, and the subject of today's video, testing out Delta Airlines Boeing 717-200, a two-cabin review featuring first class and economy from Atlanta to Detroit via Charlotte Douglas. With that out of the way, I hope you enjoy the video. First things first, I apologize for no proper footage arriving at the airport. It was still very early and I forgot to film it. Alright, so we're through security. Actually pretty painless this morning despite a massive amount of people here. Now we're waiting for the plane train to take us to Concourse C, where we will board today's ride. And as usual when I visit Atlanta, I always enjoy riding the plane train. It's way too much fun. This train, by the way, links all the concourses here in Atlanta underground. The only downside, no excellent views of the aircraft, which is a bit of a shame. Soon enough, however, I found my flight, Delta 3190, which would take me to Charlotte Douglas aboard my first of two Boeing 717s today. Atlanta Airport was undergoing some kind of massive renovation at the time I took this trip. I'm not sure what was going on, but it was an absolute mess. Weird hallways, unusual concourse layouts, even the vending machine seemed to be temporarily closed. A bit of a shame. Pretty soon I reached the end of the construction and made it to my concourse. I'd be departing from Concourse D, Gate D35. And wouldn't you know it, a 717 was waiting for me. This aircraft was the first flight, mine was the second. As soon as I arrived, my aircraft for today pulled up. November 9023 Alpha Tango, a 20-year-old 717-200, originally manufactured for AirTran and taken up by Delta in February of 2005. This would be my very first flight on a 717, and my very first flight on a DC-9 era aircraft in quite some time. My last one was back in 2006. This was so unbelievably cool to see the 717 pull up and park. I don't know about you, but Atlanta seems to be the place for 717s. There was another Delta flight heading to Memphis, Tennessee, as Flight 1681. I also managed to get another classic Delta aircraft, this 757 heading to LA. I also managed to capture a Frontier A320neo off to Las Vegas. Speaking of which, have you seen my video on Frontier? I'll link it up above. I also managed to find the new JetBlue, which I really like. I also spotted one of Delta's flagship Airbus A350s being towed to a parking stand, just coming in from Tokyo. Alright, we're off. Charlotte. But before I knew it, it was time to get on board and head to Charlotte for our first flight.
Yep.
Right. Have a good day, Mom.
Thank you. Alright, here we go, off to Charlotte on the 717, first flight of two today. As I mentioned, I would be taking two flights on 717s today. Not only did this maximize filming potential, but it was just so much more fun, and why not? Pretty soon we boarded our 717, heading into the first class cabin. Delta 717 have 12 first-class seats in a 2x2 configuration, 37 inches of pitch, 19.6 inches of width, 7 inches of recline, and it was pretty comfortable. You can see the seat offered plenty of knee room, 2 power plugs, which are great, and the safety card, which I always appreciate. Being in first class, there was a beverage, and I opted for orange juice before takeoff. And toasted you guys with my very best impression of Dennis Bunnick. Cheers, here's to one sensational flight. And with that frivolity out of the way, it was time to push back and head to the runway. It's at this time I have to give a shout out to my friend Aaron and his channel Randomized. He took a bunch of footage of my plane pushing back and getting ready for takeoff from the Atlanta Renaissance Concourse Hotel, where I did the spotting earlier. I also spotted Korean Air's new look for the first time. It's not quite grown on me yet. But pretty soon we were up in the air, thanks to the power of those Rolls-Royce BR715 turbofans, and off to Charlotte. Once on board I did the obligatory Wi-Fi test, but it never worked once for this short flight. The biggest reason I checked is because there's no in-flight entertainment on these 717s, even in first class. Keep that in mind if you fly on one. The 717 does, however, feature excellently large windows, which would be great if there wasn't terrible weather across the country today. These aircraft are clearly aging, as you can tell by the footage here. However, for us aviation geeks, that's the whole point. They won't be around forever. Another nice thing of these older aircraft, they're actual air vents, or gaspers, which many newer aircraft skip out on. I do not understand this, as they're crucial on a flight in my opinion, especially if it's hot on board. Most Delta aircraft, you can see the divider between economy and first class is simply a curtain. As you can see, the first class seat is spacious. I took this footage after my neighbor got up. The tray table comes out of the armrest and has this little half section for a drink. It also folds out the entire way, and as you can tell is plenty large, if a little flimsy. In addition to the table, there's this little drink section off to my right, to the right of the table here, which you saw a minute ago when I got my orange juice on boarding. That's an upside of first class. You don't have to use the tray table if you simply have a drink. I've also heard many people ask questions about why aircraft windows have these holes. Essentially, they exist to help balance the pressure between multiple different window panes in the window. Anyway, pretty soon we were on approach into Charlotte, descending through the clouds. As you can see by all the dirt piles over here, Charlotte Airport are working on an expansion, adding a 4th runway to the facility to help with their operations in the coming years. Starting back in June of 2023, this massive $1.06 billion expansion project will add an all-new 10,000-foot-long runway. New runway 0119 Center will be the 4th runway and a 3rd parallel for Charlotte Airport. This is to help with their growth and expansion over the coming years, and is set to open in fall of 2027. To learn much more about this project and all the things going on at Charlotte, check out my podcast episode linked in the upper right, when it's available. Now that we're here on the ground at Charlotte Airport, I had to quickly get out and exit the airport. I had something very important to do on my layover.
Get me in the video, man. Hey, welcome to Charlotte.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so that guy was really friendly and I promised I'd put him in the video. So, there you are, man. I hope you enjoy the video. Anyway, I got one last glimpse of my first 717 today, before arriving at my main reason for stopping in Charlotte today. This is the Airbus A320 that was US Airways Flight 1549, the Miracle on the Hudson. A full video all about this aircraft and her history, as well as a guided tour of the museum, coming soon. Back in Charlotte Airport, I spotted the Allegheny Airlines retro-liveried A321, also an A321 XLR off to JFK. Pretty awesome, as American just received the XLR. I also spotted my first Etihad A350, a route which just launched to Charlotte Airport only a few days prior to me taking this trip. Pretty darn cool. This was my first time passing through Charlotte Airport, and I was impressed, especially by the plane spotting. Also this American Airlines MD-80 tail, pretty cool. Also, did you know there's an outline of the entire MD-80 in the tile? I didn't know that. Once I got to my gate waiting for the 717, I ran into my pilots. They saw me filming and asked if I'd like some trading cards. This 717 card was awesome, as is the Team USA Delta A350-900. What a stunner she is, and I hope to see her in person someday. And here is my second aircraft today, November 971 Alpha Tango, a 24-year-old 717. For this leg I was in economy, arranged in a 2-3 configuration. My seat 25A on the left side, which is in the 2 section. This is best as you only have one seatmate instead of 2. I'd absolutely pick the left side on a 717 every single time. The main reason I picked a seat so far back in the cabin is for this incredible view of the wing and engine, a view only available on DC-9s, MD-80s, and of course, Boeing 717s. Pretty soon, however, we were up in the air, heading on our second flight from Charlotte to Detroit. This is a good time to remind you to subscribe to my channel. Click that notification bell to all, and leave me a comment if you're enjoying the video. Also leave a like, it really helps. Finally, we were able to get some good weather on this section of the flight, flying above the clouds and out of the storms for once. There was also a snack service on this longer flight to Detroit. I opted for Biscoff cookies and water. Biscoff are always great, especially on an airplane. I don't know why, they just are. I decided to check out the bathroom on our 717, especially since it's at the very rear of the aircraft, which I think is pretty cool. The bathroom here on the 717 was a pretty standard airplane bathroom. I mean, it was pretty small as you can see from the footage here, but it was perfectly fine for my purposes. Someone left me a comment when I put a poll on Instagram saying I'd be flying this aircraft, saying that the 717 bathroom is quite large. Well, if there is one, it's not this one here at Economy. That's for darn sure. Also, something pretty cool and nerdy about being on such an old aircraft, something I've not seen in a long time, an actual ashtray with ashes in it. Pretty funny. Finally, at the back of this aircraft we see a pretty cool feature, the emergency exit door at the rear. Now in the event of an emergency, you pull this handle and the door opens. On older aircraft like MD-80s and DC-9s, they used to have a staircase. However, the 717 just has an emergency exit slide, so do not do this unless it's a true emergency. You can also see here the benefits of sitting on the left, with only 2 seats instead of 3 in economy, a much better deal. You can also see the fan blades spinning here from this seat in the back, one of the reasons I chose it, to see the engines. The seats in economy here were pretty small, but honestly better than a lot of airlines I've tried. I also managed to snag a safety card. The views out the window on this leg were absolutely incredible, truly reminiscent of the golden age of flying, especially on such an iconic bird with that iconic silhouette of the engine and wing. The 717 is just such a special aircraft, and this was amazing to fly on one for the first time, and hopefully not my last time on one of these birds. Delta recently announced they plan to keep the planes well into the 2030s, so if you've not flown a 717, you'll still get a chance. We ended our day with a flight over downtown Detroit in a holding pattern. This gives you a good opportunity to see the Detroit skyline a little bit as we descend through the clouds. You can also see Canada over there across the river, that's Ontario, right across from Detroit. And there's the Renaissance Center in downtown Detroit. For those of you interested in seeing the full takeoff and landing footage for this entire 717 trip, both flights, check out the link in the upper right, available right now. Once we landed, I was lucky enough to be invited to see the cockpit. As you can tell, it's much more advanced than older MD-80s and DC-9s. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, make sure to subscribe, turn on the notifications, leave me a comment, and a like. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video on the 717, in first class and economy. I really enjoyed making it, and I am hopeful that this flight on the 717 was not my last. If you've never flown a 717, I encourage you to do so while you still can, the last of the DC-9s. But until then, I'll be wishing you blue skies and tailwinds.